Early reports suggest that unlike Iowa, which had relatively low rates of turnout, New Hampshire voters went to the polls at rates approaching or exceeding 2008 levels, a record high. He carried 42% of the Latino vote and 33% of voters without college degrees, according to preliminary results from CNN. Like in Iowa, the former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg performed strongly, coming close behind Sanders in voter support. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar surged to a third-place finish, but both she and Buttigieg have had a difficult path ahead, given their lack of support in Super Tuesday states and among voters of color. They just don't have the money. They don't have the organization at this point in time. That could change, but it would be very, very hard for them to make a winning turnaround. They could definitely, maybe with the surge off these two states, Klobuchar maybe as well, and Buttigieg could stay in the race for a little bit longer, but it remains to be seen. On the other hand, Senator Elizabeth Warren and former Vice President Joe Biden both finished in the single digits without earning any delegates, a debilitating blow to both of their campaigns now, which are considered to be in a very bad place, both of them. In 2016, if New Hampshire was the state where Sanders' campaign first came to life, Nevada was where it died. Sanders was hopeful for a victory in the caucuses, but fell just short there, 53-47, amid acrimony and allegations of misconduct. That was a massive story in the last election cycle. It dampened his momentum heading into South Carolina, where he was trounced. 2020 could be different. Nevada is also considering its first real test of a presidential candidate's appeal to voters of color. Latinos make up almost a third of the state's population, and Sanders is counting on strong support from the voting bloc to carry him to victory. Biden, meanwhile, ditched his own primary party last night in New Hampshire to head over to South Carolina, which holds its contests a week after the Nevada caucuses. At the same time, the leadership of the powerful Casino Workers Culinary Union, Unite Here Local 226, ramped up its attacks against Sanders on Tuesday with English and Spanish language flyers, texts, and emails to its 60,000 members. This is, as John Ralston, the Nevada journalist, says, this is something. So, yeah, in a new flyer, this Culinary 226 warns that members, that Bernie Sanders would end their much-loved union health care. Which is something that he has been hit with, especially from people like from La Rata, Pete Buttigieg, and has responded to, I think, very, very frequently, and has come out with a plan to ensure and really demonstrate how union workers would be moved off of their current health care into Medicare for all. And I think without a doubt, it would be a beneficial thing to unions overall. And I do get there are some worries about the transition process, but Bernie Sanders has had a plan outlined for it. This is an attack really out of nowhere because Bernie Sanders, he's addressed these concerns many, many times. And I think it's just logically, it's better for a union to not have to worry about healthcare when it comes to negotiating tables so they can fight for better things that their members need more and more, like wages, more time off. For example, say you're working as a nurse or in a school, you need more resources, some more class sizes, things that make their lives better. And healthcare should be something that you don't have to negotiate over. It's not on the table. Healthcare is something that I think should be guaranteed. And if you talk to a lot of union workers, they will agree with you when it comes to that. So the Granite State, they've had a long tradition of populist and anti-war movements going back to the near victory of Eugene McCarthy in the 1968 Democratic primary. McCarthy's strong showing the state on an anti-Vietnam War platform convinced incumbent President Lyndon Johnson to abandon his re-election campaign. The American Friends Service Committee, a Quaker initiative, has made New Hampshire its focus for organizing communities around issues of justice, especially on foreign policy and poverty. Sanders' message on challenging economic inequality, promoting Medicare for all, and his leadership in opposing the Iraq War and the more recent push to cut U.S. support for Yemen provided a clear contrast with his competitors and a clarion call for voters, particularly those between the ages of 18 and 44, a demographic who readily won thanks to, in part, the great college and youth organizing efforts. Shout out the Great Sunrise Movement there did a great job with that. But 29% of voters said foreign policy was their most important issue, voted for Buttigieg. Just 9% supported Sanders, which is interesting. In many respects, Sanders' victory was equally a defeat for the Warren and Biden campaigns. In October, Biden and Warren enjoyed a comfortable lead in the polls. Warren, after a disappointing showing in Iowa, had hoped for a comeback in New Hampshire, which also shares a media market with their home state of Massachusetts. Biden, who declared victory in Iowa despite a hazy tabulation of state delegates, benefited from momentum going into New Hampshire. 30% of voters who have said they decided on their candidate within the last few days supported him, and 36% of voters who decided before the last few days voted for Sanders. On the airwaves, Vote Vets, a Democratic soft money group, poured roughly $400,000 into advertisements in support of Buttigieg, hoping to harness enthusiasm for the former mayor as he headed into New Hampshire. That certainly helped quite a bit because he did surge up in the polls. He was predicted by at least in the average of polls in the Real Clear Politics, to lose by about 5. He ended up losing by about 1.5. So Buttigieg carries 33% of voters with household incomes over $100,000, while Sanders got votes from 34% of voters with household incomes under $50,000. So Klobuchar earned around 20% of the vote as of Tuesday night after the primary, led among white college-educated women and voters who supported Hillary Clinton in the 2016 primary. It's interesting. 2 candidates, Andrew Yang and Michael Bennet, dropped out of the race. So the Vermont senator also faced a variety of hurdles going into this primary, as I'm sure you are well aware of. So the way it seems right now is that Nevada will be holding several days. The good thing is that Nevada is going to be holding several days of early voting before the February 22nd caucus. There's plenty of time for these cable networks, particularly MSNBC, which is favored by Democrats, to spend the days after Sanders' popular vote victory in Iowa, New Hampshire as well, skewering the senator, with hosts going so far as to compare his zealous to supporters to Nazis, and to claim that a presidency led by Sanders could lead to mass executions. Shout out to Chris Matthews for that one. About this early voting thing. Early voting is going to be running from February 15th to 18th. It's going to take place in over 80 locations across the state in response to last week's disaster in Iowa. However, Nevada Democratic officials are banning plans to use the app whose issues contributed to ongoing delays. Yes, folks, they were going to use the same app until people are like, oh, God, no. So instead of using the app, which was developed by a company known as Shadow Incorporated, the Nevada Democratic Party will be using a tool related to iPads and distributed to patient chairs. No word, as we talked about last week, as to what in the world that tool is. The Culinary Union, which is made up of women and Latinos mostly, has been actively discouraging support for Sanders and Warren over Medicare for All. A little bit nicer to Warren, though, interestingly enough, and she has been certainly milking up that support, as you've seen. Warning its members that the single-player plan would end their health care despite not having made an official endorsement in the race. Chuck Rocha, senior Sanders advisor, said the campaign had been reaching out to culinary workers directly. We've been directly calling them at their homes, talking to them at their work sites, and sending them mail. We've had hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail to culinary workers who are... so we get hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail to culinary workers who are Latino in Nevada, talking about where Bernie Sanders stands. And we have huge support among the culinary rank and file. I really don't think that this campaign gets enough credit, because it really, people are freaking out. Oh, the Nevada Culinary Workers Union. Oh my God. What's going to happen? It's not good. Oh, the Nevada or the Iowa caucuses, they're rigged. People are making big mistakes. Folks, this campaign is incredibly well run. The Bernie Sanders campaign, they know exactly what they're doing when it comes to running a campaign and not letting people pull off this crap on them. Because remember in Iowa, they had those vote totals ready to go. They had their own precincts. They knew what they were doing. And I think it's no different here. Chuck Rocha, speaking for the campaign on this one, knows what's going on. So there's no reason to be fearful at this time. They're trying to go out there for that. So the Bernie Sanders campaign, they have been busy as part of their Latino outreach efforts, which began earlier than many of its rivals. The Sanders campaign connected with voters through Spanish language literature, mailers, and Unido con Bernie events across early states. Similar efforts worked in Iowa, where the Vermont senator won 52% of the vote across high-density Latino caucus locations, and a recent analysis by the UCLA Latino Policy And Politics Institute found Biden came in a distant second at 15%. Sanders also swept the 4 Spanish-language satellite caucuses, winning votes from 430 out of the 483 people who attended them. Buttigieg had trouble making inroads with Hispanic voters, but received 11% of the demographics vote in New Hampshire on Tuesday. He spoke Spanish during his closing speech. The campaign faced criticism last month also for have not yet fully translating his English language website into Spanish. But this is coming in. And the interesting thing is, this is just coming in right now, according to Politico. The Bernie Sanders campaign, not the Bernie Sanders, Culinary Union 226, has decided that they will not endorse a 2020 candidate. They criticized Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all proposal, but what it looks like right now is there would be too much backlash, I think, among the rank and file workers to really fully pick a candidate. The union created an opening for Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, 2 moderates with little demonstrated support in the state, with this healthcare flyer that's been handed out. And it was a further setback for Joe Biden, who's been desperate to reassert himself after 2 demoralizing performances in New Hampshire. We're going to endorse our goals. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Says Gioconda Arguello-Klein, the union secretary-treasurer at a press conference in Las Vegas. We're not going to endorse a candidate. She said, we respect every single political candidate right now while signaling out Biden by name as someone the union has known for many years and who has been our friend. For Buttigieg and Klobuchar, the non-endorsement represents an inroad into the Latino state where both candidates were polling in single digits but are coming off strong finishes in Iowa and New Hampshire. I disagree with Politico there on that one. Not getting any attention from someone doesn't make you able to have an inroads with them generally. Just saying. I mean, I'm not as good as a politics expert as Politico. Just kidding. I think, I'm not an idiot when it comes to politics. But the mobilization of service employees, many of them in Las Vegas, are critical to the Nevada caucuses. They go out organizing, canvassing stuff for a certain candidate. The focus on the culinary dispute with Sanders has been watched closely ahead of voting there. The union and its affiliates represent some 60,000 workers in the restaurant and hospitality industries in Las Vegas and Reno. It is also the largest immigrant organization in the state, with Latinos accounting for more than half of its membership, and it's a major source of mobilization anywhere. And Sanders does very well, very, very well with Latinos. So the refusal to endorse is a repeat in 2016 when the union decided to stay out of the bitter primary between Sanders and Clinton. This year, the union helped drag itself into the crossfire by criticizing Medicare for All in a leaflet to members that outraged Sanders supporters and progressive groups. The union fired back at Sanders supporters on Thursday, and Sanders' campaign tweeted a message of support for the group to calm tensions. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very clear that this was something that just kind of came out of nowhere, and maybe it's something that the Bernie Sanders campaign not doing enough outreach. Maybe someone else reached out to the union leadership and maybe tried to push them in a certain direction, maybe another campaign, maybe another interest group. Because it certainly seems like, because there is going around on the interweb a statement from the quote-unquote rank-and-file members of this and saying that the Zaid Jilani is actually putting this out on Twitter. Let's see if I can pull this up for you. This is a statement with the rank-and-file quote-unquote people of who has been pushing for this desire to so what it looks like is the full statement is online on a Google Forms being circulated around, and we don't know how much of that is actually they do have a thing about the union that determines whether or not there's a union. So there's a statement that has been created. We don't know. Seems to be by a union member, but that seems to be so we can't say it's entirely clear yet at this point. So this year, the union got into that controversy. Still, tensions linger, and the union is making sure that members know who wants to risk the health care they have fought for and who doesn't. said a source familiar with the group's thinking. So my mentions on Twitter are completely unmanageable, says spokeswoman Bethany Kahn, telling Politico after posting on Twitter that I'm trying to do organizing work to make sure that we have a good Nevada caucus, but Twitter activists, the thing Twitter activists wish they could do.